Hey, so thanks for attending this Dynamic Power App Supporter Saturday bootcamp. And so today I'm going to talk about the fresh approach to build the Power App Supporter using the web APIs that recently released as a preview from the Microsoft. And so before starting that, let me introduce myself. And I'm Aung, but everybody call me AK, my initials, AK, so much easier to call me. And I'm currently live in New Zealand for almost 5 years. And previously I worked in Singapore, and I was born and raised in Myanmar. And I work as an ICC. It is not the International Cricket Council. It's more like an independent consultant and coder. And you can follow me on my blog, GitHub, and Twitter, and you can connect me through LinkedIn. And last things, and I am the Microsoft MVP and mainly work on the Power Apps component framework. Cool. So let's move there. So today agenda is we are going to walk through the classic approach. What my classic approach is the existing approach to build a multi-step form. And then we will have a look at the new capabilities that offer from the web APIs and the offerings. And after that, that we will try to build the same multi-step form that we built on the step one. And we were trying to use the web API and build differently and see what are the benefits. And followed by, and they were exploring the new possibilities, like what can we do with the web APIs, and then by the question and answers. So if you have any questions, you can turn on the chat, or you can turn on your mic and you can hit me the questions. So the first one is a classic approach. This is going to cover what we are currently doing in the Power Apps portals. If you want to like a data entry, like a multi-step form. So let's go through like a Power Portal components, Power Apps portal components. So the first components that we need to notice, the web page is a web page. As a web page is nothing, it's just a container for your contents, like your text and HTML contents, and to host the other components, such as like entity form and web forms and the entity list. So these are the cover in the first two sessions. The entity form is quite useful for kind of like a simple form, and like maybe like a contact us and the feedback. So it is more like a single step form. If you want to build a kind of like a complex form based on the like a conditional logic, we need to write like a JavaScript and use the jQuery. And the web form is pretty useful for example like a visa application or the resident applications, where you need to fill up like a heaps of information. So web form is like a multi-step form, and this is like a wizard base, so where you can save the form and you can come back later and continue the forms. So this entity form and the web forms they are used for entering the data into the common data service. And now once we have the data, we need to represent back to the user. This is where the entity list is quite important. The entity list is basically the equivalent to a view in the model-driven apps. So where you can see the list of records on the page. So all these like entity form, the web form, entity list, they are working with they're working with the data from the model-driven apps. And then when we talk about the data, there's always the securities and permissions. This is where the entity permissions come in place. The entity permissions are like it's very powerful features that you can set a different levels of privilege based on like your user rules. So so here, the next demo that we are going to do is we're going to build a web forms, and we will see how we do that. So Let me switch to the my browsers. Can you stay see my browsers? Probably no.
Yep, we can see
Yeah.
you.
Okay, that's good. So here, what I've done is something called the exemption application. So this is currently, like a COVID-19 is a hot topic around the world, and everybody gets affected. So, and as this exemption applications, the idea is, when you travel to the other countries, you need to kind of like go into the isolations, like a 14 days isolations. But sometimes, like when you travel, you might be the transit passengers, which you don't really need to. It doesn't make sense to stay the 14 days in the for the isolations, or there may be some medical agencies that you don't really suited to stay in the managed isolations, and then you need to go to, for example, like the hospital. So the idea is, like you can apply this exemptions from the going to the isolations. So here, this we will have kind of like the primary applicant who is going to apply the applications, and then like all the applications, there may be a few questions about like a criminal histories, and some people sometimes some people may travel alone, but there may be some cases there will be like they travel with a family, they want to include more people on the applications, so not just for one person, maybe for the whole family. So to do that, like I've created a one main entity in the CDS, which is called the exemption applications, and they would have the additional applicant. Right. And so let me switch to this is the portal management app. Here I have the web page. So I have a applying exemption web page. This applying exemption web page, it used the web form called the exemption applications. So I've created the web form exemption application web form. So like I said, the web forms is a series of the like a multi steps. So it contains like a 3 steps. In the web forms, here you can see it's always there's a start step. That means this is a beginning of the web forms. The start step, so we say it is like a primary applicant. And here, what we are doing is there's a couple of actions that we can do. So it's currently we are loading the form. We load the form from the exemption application entity, and then we set it to the insert mode. This means that when they start the applications, we are going to create the application record. So that's why we need to set it to the insert mode. And we are going to, we said, okay, we're going to use the form. It's called the portal main form. Where does it come from? This comes from the solutions. So if I go to my solutions and I open my entities, under the forms, I have the portal main forms. So we are here basically saying, okay, I want to load the portal main form. And here we can also say, you can not just the whole form, you can also load the specific tab. So here we are going to load applicant tab. So what does it mean? So like applicant tab, here you will see only first name, last name, email address, like a criminal history questions. And then I got like another tab called the additional applicants, where it has the subgrid. So now let's switch back to the portal management. And then, so once this step is completed, we are going to move to the next steps. This next steps, this time type is different. It's called conditions. The condition is like like a branching of the form. And what do we want to do here is we want to check the attributes called has more applicants. If it is true, and we want to load the another forms, which is the asking for the additional applicants. And here again, the same thing. We load the form from the same entity. The form definitions. The mode is now different because we already created a record in the first page. Now we are going to kind of like update. So that means that we need to edit. And again, here we want to load a portal main form. And then next we want to load the tab, the additional applicant tabs. So once this is built, and let me show you the result. So this is the portal front end, where the public, well, as the public I can see. And here I can fill up my informations, and then you will see here I need to has criminal history is the require fee. So I can say no. So, but if I say yes, you will see the criminal history is showed up, and this became the mandatory. So how do I do this? So let me show you how do I do that. So now I'm going to switch back to the portal management. So I will go to the web page. Oops, sorry about that. The web pages. This is the web page that hosts the web forms. And under the localized content, and I will say here on the document ready, that means when the documents, all the documents and components are loaded, I use the XR importer. This is the XR importer JS library that was developed by me and can be available through the GitHub. And so what I'm saying here is, okay, I want to attach the on-change event on the criminal history questions, which is this. And when it is on change, we will do some logic. We check whether the value they choose is yes. If it is yes, I will say set visible true and let's make it require. So now if I go back to the things and if I submit without the criminal history, without entering anything, so it will say criminal history is a required fee. So that means I need to enter it. And if I say no, and that would then have the, you don't need to enter the criminal history. But now, so I want to add more applicants. So if I click next, so what happened in the backend is that is going to create a new exemption application record in the CDS. So now I can add the additional applicants like my family. So this is the out of the box way. So I have added the subgrid and the additional applicants I can create. When I create the entity form load up, and I will enter like some information. So 1, that's fine. Let's enter more. Right. So now you will see if what if you have like a big family, if you want to include, now maybe that you were traveling with a group of the friends and like a 10, are we going to click like a 10 times, create, pop up, wait for a while, fill up the information, submit it, and again, repeat the process. So this is the classic approach, like without adding any customizations and like any custom code. So when I submit it, yeah, that's finished. So this is the very out of the box configuration way. So let me switch back to the PowerPoint slide. So the demo, basically we fill up some information, so we fill up the related entities. Right, so let's look at the user experience here. So if you look at that, this is the out of the box thing is like a really industrialized user interface, and it is not really refined. And also like you need to familiarize the Power Apps customizations, because when we want to build the form on the portal, you need to go to the Maker portal and you need to customize the forms as in the administration experience. So that means, someone has to know a little bit about the Power Apps customizations. And it is also quite challenging to develop a really highly customized user experience. Here, I'm not saying that we cannot do that, but it can be a bit challenging, and so advanced customizations such as like a liquid, like a liquid is a template language that runs on the server side and that can retrieve the data. So there's another sessions in the later by the Victor, so he will cover the advanced stuff for the template language, a liquid template language, and like I said, like all the manipulations, like conditional logics, are basically JavaScript driven, and all the jQuery that we use like a to manipulate the document object model. And then if you don't want to use the jQuery, like I said, you can use the library, the example.js on the GitHub, and that is like the client-side library for the Power Apps portals that you can, as long as you know the attribute names, that you can do like a setting visible, like a hiding the fee, making required, attaching the events, and so on. So this is the classic approach with the advanced customizations. So you can do like a highly customized portal, but there's a lot of things that to work around. So the next thing is like the web API. So this is still in the preview. This is released about like 2 months ago, I guess. Yeah, and this web API is like that allow you to interact with the Power Apps portals data. So the overview, the web APIs, the good news is that the web APIs in the Power Apps portals, it is almost identical to the web APIs from the common data service. So if you are the Power Apps or the model-driven apps developer, or like even Dynamic 365, you can easily jump onto the step working with the web APIs on the Power Apps portals. And it supports CUD. That means it supports create, post, method, update, patch, and delete. Here, what's missing is the retrieve. So we can say like we can retrieve the data using the liquid, or you can even create probably the entity list and export as an OData. But it will be really good if we can retrieve the data through the web API. So currently, bear in mind, it's only create, update, and delete. And to use the web API, so there's a version, so it has to be the 9.2.6.41 or later. So if it is 4.1 or later, you are good to go. You can start playing around with the web APIs from today. So to do that, to enable the web API, there's a few site settings that we need to configure. The first thing is the web API / entity names enabled. So that is the site setting names. So for example, if you want to enable the web API for content or the account, the web API / account / enable, and then the value is true. And it's pretty straightforward. And the next settings that we need to set is like attributes. So web APIs, entity name / fees. So here, if you want, for example, let's say if you want a lot to expose all the attributes, you can use star. Or if you want to only expose a specific attributes, for example, you want them to only update like a date of birth from the content, and then you can say, like a date of birth and email, date of birth, comma, email. So if it is like if you want to export everything, to just use star. Otherwise, you can use a comma separated. And there's another settings like a web API error, inner error, that will give you the more developer focused error message. You can enable the web API from all the entities except the configuration entities, which I cover from the previous the previous presentation. So anything that's that with like ADX underscore, those are you cannot you shouldn't be doing, and you will not be able to do in the futures through the web API. It's not like we expose the data through the web API. Previously, we only expose the data through the web form, entity form, or entity list. and we have the entity permissions to control the privilege and the securities. So here now say, how do we do this? How do we control the securities in the web API? So right, the first thing is the authentications. The authentications here for the web API is the application session based. So it's based on the logins of the current application sessions. It can be the login users, or it can be the anonymous user, depending on the HANA authorization setup. And it used the cross-site request forgery tokens. Which means you need to be on the page to call the web API. You cannot call from the outside of the page. And the other authorizations, like I said, for the entity forms, the web forms, entity lists, they use the entity permissions. Here, the same thing, they use the entity permissions. That means, if you have already set up a security framework using like web form, entity forms, and entity list today, you don't need to change anything for the authorization purpose. If you want to use the web API, that will work. You don't need to change. You don't need to worry about the authorizations that you need to make change. And also, of course, there's a web rule which is related to, which is associated with the entity permissions. So if you look at this, like once the you make a request for the web APIs, that go through the entities and look at the entity permissions and look at the web roles of the users, which is not the system user. This is the public user, which is the contact in the CDS. Right. So to make an API call, so Microsoft has provided a quite short script, JavaScript that you can use. So basically, this is like getting verifications tokens and attaching the token to the request. And so you just need to put this code in your page. And then if you want to make a call, you can say, here that you define a type. Type is a post, which is create, and you define a URL, and it's like a underscore slash underscore API slash your entity collection names, which is a proven name. And the content type is obviously the JSONs, and as the data, you pass the JSON data as a request body, and then once it is succeeded, it will run the success function. So it is pretty straightforward, and it is pretty, like a very, very similar to the current web API call to the CDS. Right. So let's have a look at the demo, like how we can use the web APIs and the Power Exporters. And this time we are going to rebuild the forms that we show in the previous demo using the web API. Right. Cool. So to do that, I have to create a form. I can write an HTML code and even like a JavaScript to create the forms. But what I'm trying to show today is we can also incorporate like a different third-party service. So today I'm going to show something called a form.io. So form.io is basically the things that you can build a form like using like a drag and drops. What I have built here is I have built the same, the very similar form using the form.io. So I have like a first name, last name, and email, and I have the same questions about this. And here you will see this is like a repeating grid, and to add the additional applicants. So let's have a look at the sum of the properties. So first names, this is just a label, and the validations, I said I wasn't required. I can take it out. It's not showing anymore, like it's not required anymore. So I want to make it required. And the important thing is for the API, this is a property name, which is the like a JSON property name that has to be same as the fee name in the CDS. So basically, this form can be created by anyone as long as they have the correct fee name, right? So the first name, for example, like a last name, the same thing. So here there's like a few logics I applied. So for example, I only want to show this explain your criminal history only when this is and when I answer yes. So to do that, we can also do like some conditional logic. So they say, I want to display this explain your criminal history text box. When has criminal history question is this value, which is yes. It's just that easy. So, like you don't need to write a JavaScript and to show and hide. And also same thing here, I only want to show these sessions when I want to add more applicants. So same thing, looking at the things, the conditions, I want to show when add a more applicant is true. So this is pretty cool. And so basically that is that. So you can do like you can add more fee, like a drag and drops. You can add like a table, like a tree. So this is pretty easy to use. And so now what I'm going to do is, so there's a few things that we need to do before using that. We need to include the library or the resources, 3 resources on the website first. And then we need some like an HTML element to host the form. And like you can follow this, or you can get the form structure as a JSON, like this is a component, which is currently I'm doing. So you can copy and put in the forms and it will load it. So to do that, I'll show you how I did it. So I have another web page called the Apply Exemption Web API. And so to check those, let's go to the Khaing page. And then events. So there's like a bunch of the scripts that I have written, but basically it looks like a monsters, but this components from here to there is basically the copy of all the components in the JSON format. So, and then so I have like we can write a promise like when the form is submitted. Here I will show you like what's the form data as we get from the form, and then here again I use my framework, which is basically the wraparound versions of the Microsoft scripts, and then I create a record called the exemption applications. I pass the JSON data. So that's JSON data, including the additional applicants. So that means the web API on the Power Apps portals also support the deep insert. So usually you will create like a parent record first, and then you will iterate the child record and create and related to the parent records. So there will be like a multiple API call, but with the deep inserts, we only need to make a one call and create the parent record and child record within the single call. So, which is pretty cool. And so this is just this. So you will see like this things is not really coded. It's basically generated from components from the drag and drop, and the only things that we need to write is like a few lines of scripts to create or update or delete the records, depending on what you need. So now let's go to the new page that use the form IO and going through the web API. So I will enter some of my informations. Then I will answer say no, which is not a problem. And when I say yes, that this is that I need to explain my criminal histories. If you notice, the submit button is disabled because this is a form IO is a third parties, and so it is quite intelligent to know whether you have enter everything that you need. So if it is not all the information, that it doesn't allow you to submit. So I would say I drive too fast. And I want to add like a no, that's fine. But if I have less, yes, I can add. And here I can keep adding like a, see, and how easy it is, like I just need to add another, and this is like an inline. So, you know, like one of the most requested feature in the portal is like a, can we have like a editable grid? So because if you want to edit, you need to click and you need to go to the entity forms, come back to the main form. There's like a lot of like a back and forth. But using like a web API, and these features can be easily done. And David D, and you know, okay, maybe brother. And if I don't want, I can just take it out. So that means that the whole page, all the data has been submitted back to the CDS backend. So it's there in the browser, it's there in the client. So let's add like a one more. Let's back again. Okay, so I have two, and you know, if you have more, then just keep adding more. And now you can see like the submit, I can submit it. And here it's again, like if I don't enter like a proper email, an invalid email, the submit button is just gone, and they straight away they enter the valid email. So let's look at the backend, the process, or the data that we got sent. And when I click submit, you will see this is the things that we get from the form, and here the like a JSON format is like a first name, last named, and I have the relationships to the child entity, and that's including two. So if I look at the network, you can see there is only one request to the API that include all my the assumption application plus the additional applicants. So it is just only one request, and you can basically create all the child record in the one request. So let's go back and check whether that data is actually submitted. And let's look at here. This is the same time around, say 10:36 p.m. So if I open that, you can see this is yes, I'm driving to this. I have more applicants. These are the additional applicants. So this is like a pretty, you know, like it's more to me. Even though it's like a web API, to me, this is like a really local, because you can just basically build the form even without knowing like a Power Apps customizations. It's pretty cool. Right, so that is the demo and that I want to show. So that means like what can we do, or what are the possibility that like can be done using like a web API. So these are some of my thoughts. Like it might not be valid anymore, like in the futures, but these are some of the thoughts that I have with the web API. So this is the opportunity, or the chance to build this single true page applications on the Power Apps portals. So, you know, that's as long as we have the web API and JavaScript can be written, that means that we can basically like a really built like a client-side applications and really responsive one, and it can be, like I said, like a single page applications. And also it's also a welcome to the any web developers. So when I say the web developers, mainly for the front-end web developers. So currently, like a customizing or the modifying the UI and the client-side logic and the Power as ported is pretty challenging for those developers that doesn't have any experience with Power Apps, because they need to know like how to customize the forms, where do need to customize the form, and also, and like the sorry. Yep. So they need to know like how to customize the forms, and then they also need to know, like a navigation through the Power Apps portal management apps. So like even like creating the web forms. And if you, let's say, imagine if you like a 20 steps, that can be the very challenging to do that. And because of the opening up this opportunity for the other front and web developers, and that means also we can also use a variety of JS frameworks, like probably like Angular, like a React, or even like a Vue or any JavaScript framework, and build the app, a JavaScript app using like Angular apps, and host it on the Power as portals, and that apps communicate or to the get the data, they create the data, update the data through the web API, without using the entity forms on the web forms or the list. And that's also like the very essentials for the Power Apps component framework support in the portals. So the Power Apps components framework PCF is already being like a hit in the in the model-driven apps, and where they allow you to build the custom components, which used to be like unsupported customizations, but now we have like a proper framework to build the custom control in the model-driven apps. And that's this is also coming to the portals in the early this next years, and this web APIs will be the very it became essential to support the Power Apps components framework on the portal. And like if you want to know about the Power Apps web API in the Power Apps portals, you can go to this link. This is a very high-level overviews that what we can do. And the next thing is that Microsoft also have the details on the performing the operations and creating the HTTP request and error handling for this web API. Bear in mind, these are still in the preview, so it is not advisable to use on the production instance. But if you want to play around, as long as you have the versions, the correct versions, you can play around from today. And if you want to know about like a community resources, like a Ready Exam, Nick Doma, one of the portal guru is in Canada. So he has written the blog post for like using the Power Apps web API and implementing the approval process in the Power Apps portal. And also there's another deep dive blog post from the Dancing with CRMs, who is Alexander, so who is also presenting it today. So you can go and check like the more detailed explanations about this web APIs in the Power Apps portals. Yes, so that brings my presentations and my sessions to the end. So, right. So this is the last things like in my Portal.js, excellent Portal.js. So if you are interested, so go and have play, and you can download you can use the library for free, and I frequently update it, adding the new features in the library. So it is maintained by me as well. So yeah, so thank you very much for the update and like organizing this event, and thank yous for attending the sessions. So and yes, so if you can go to the survey link and fill out the response, that will be appreciated. Anything good or bad, just with the honest things, just put everything what you think, and we like to hear back from you. So is there any questions?
Awesome, Aung. It's a great session. So we have some questions in the chat. Like, first of all, could you please share your social media details so that people can quickly connect with you if they want to know more about the API that you have built up? And
This one?
if they, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We have few questions like how would you indicate if the additional applicants have a criminal history using the API method?
So that's the good questions, and so let me switch back here. So what we can do is like because this is a demo, I keep trying to make it really simple. So we can create probably a more attributes here, and like whether they has the criminal histories, and going back to the form IO, we can add like a more columns. For example, I can add like radio button here and say, and then API is, for example, let's say like do that, and of course this is a require, and then we can say no. For example, no is think this is no, and for example, let's say yes. Something like this, right? So, and we can keep adding the columns, and if they choose yes, and like a next column become like a mandatory and showing up. So this once this is done, so all we need to do is save the forms and go to embed, and I take the components and replace the JSON in my scripts to reflect the changes. Does that answer questions?
Awesome. I think the Sikoma asked these questions. Could you please confirm that it answered your questions, Sikoma?
Yes, the question was answered. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And Oliver is asking like how was that custom subgrid has been developed? Is that liquid custom liquid template code or something generic?
So the custom grids is using the form IO. So what I can do is I add like a data grid, and instead adding the columns, and as long as I give the for example, I set the property names from the API correctly, that will match the exported JSON's payload from the web API, and we just need to send straight away to the web API. So you can also write your own like a data grid using like a liquid, for example, use the liquid to retrieve the data and display as a table, and then use write a JavaScript to make it become like a more editable grid, and then submit the changes or update the changes through the web API.
Kokulan is asking like can we use portal form.io customization output with the liquid template?
So this is so the question is they want to use this portal from the IO in the liquid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think yeah,
Yeah.
that
So
is
the portal from IO is basically a JavaScript framework. It doesn't need to be in the liquid. It can be on the any HTML page. So it is a client-side library.
Kundan is asking how to embed the generated JSON in the form.io in the portal code.
All right. So here's let me show you that. So So the first thing that we need to do is we need to include these three resources in the portal. That can be on your web template or it can be on the header or anywhere. And then I can show you where I put. Um, here. Probably I made it in the header. Let me check. Oh yeah. So here I included that the resources that require to load the library in the header, and then inside the web page. So this is just loading my library, so it doesn't need to be there. So what I do is I just create another a div element, and then here once the three libraries are loaded, all we need to do is a form IO. Form IO is from the library, and then you get the element, the div element, which I created in the web page, and then you set the components. These components, all the components came from the form IO. So just or what I did is I just copy this and paste there, and then write a few scripts to push the data to the web API of the PowerS portal.
cool. I think this answers the question. And I think Atul is asking, can we put lookup fields from the form.io.form?
Probably no. It's that like we need a kind of like I mean, the form IO is not really for the kind of the. It doesn't work like the way as like a Power as Portis forms. So if you need like a lookup, probably we need to write our own components, which
Mhm.
I was hoping like a one PCF came to the portal. That will be the um, more options to do that.
Okay, cool. Sri Ram has a question like, can you call third-party API in the Power Apps portal?
Yes, so as long so we can call the PowerS API importers from as long as it can be called from like a using like a JavaScript. You can also use the implicit grant flow to pass the token to the third party API. So if like a if we have like a library and if we are allowed to call the third party API through the scripts through the client side, and that should be fine.
Okay, I think okay, then after this session, you can have a look one more time. What are the questions are there in the chat?
Yep.
If I one, yeah. So I think it's a great session on the web API. I think web API is one of the, as I told in the earlier of my session, like a web API is one of the most hot topic that Microsoft is going to introduce in the future. And I really appreciate that Aung has developed his own API as well. So it provides a lot of features as well. Yeah, so it's a great feature. And at the beginning of the session, he has just demonstrated the web forms capabilities. So those who are are new on the portal and they just wanted to know what is the main difference between the web forms and the entity form in the portal. So I just wanted to let you know everyone, like web forms is basically used on the portal when you have to feed the information or push the information in the multiple forms. So let's say if I have to, I'm a student, sorry, I'm an employee and I have to apply for a job in any company. So I have to submit my information in multiple forms. Like I have to provide the education details, I have to provide my professional details, I have to provide my salary details. So I have to provide the details in the multiple forms. So for these purposes, if I have a such requirement on the portal along with the progress bar or the step counts, then I always go with the web forms. But if I have to submit my information in a single form, for example, like if I have to submit a ticket or create a case, then the entity form is the best fit for that. So this is the basic real-time example that you can understand that how the web forms and the entity form differs with each other. And obviously the web API is, we had a lot of limitation on the Power Apps portals, like we cannot perform the CRUD operations except using entity forms, web forms, and the entity list. But now using the web APIs, we are allowed to use the editable subgrid. We can create subgrid. We can pass input output parameters from to the portal. So I think it's a great feature that Microsoft is going to introduce. So thanks again, Aung, for your great sessions, and thanks for your time today to
It's all right.
attend this event. Thanks a
Yep.
lot.
Okay. Thank you, mate. Cheers.
Thank you.